Hello everyone, and welcome to Sevenoaks Campaigners Online. As you can see, we're in the science laboratory today, and we're pursuing a couple of the alchemist's dreams. The alchemist had a number of dreams. We're just looking at two of them. One was the idea of trying to turn a base metal into gold. So starting with a metal that was a common one, but turning it into something that was really valuable. So one idea, turning a base metal into gold. The other idea was to try to produce an elixir of life, something which, if you drank it, would make you live forever. Well, we're going to begin with trying to turn a base metal into gold. And the base metal I've got today is 3 American cents, and they're copper, and we'd like to try and turn them into gold. The first thing we need to do is clean them, and I don't like too much hard work, so I'm going to try and get the chemicals to do that for me. So you can see we have a small beaker here, and we're going to put some vinegar into that. We won't need a vast amount of this, so something like that should do it. And we're going to add a spoonful of salt to the vinegar and then give that a stir. And then we're going to add our 3 cents to the vinegar. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to leave those for a bit in the hope that the vinegar and the salt is going to clean them and make them all bright and shiny. That's going to take a little while, so we'll leave that to happen and come back in a few minutes. Let's see how these are getting on. So I'm going to try to get them out of the vinegar, and we'll rinse them off to start with in a beaker of water. There's one. That looked all right. There's 2. And there's a 3rd one in here. Here we are. And I'm going to take those and give them a good rinse and dry so that we can move on to the next stage. So I'm just going to take these away to the sink, and I'll see you in a few moments. So here we are. I've got my cleaned 1 cent pieces. I gave them a final polish, so here you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, and they're now all nice and bright and shiny. We're going to leave one of those so that we know where we started, and we're going to take the other 2 to experiment with. So we'll leave one and experiment with 2. And I brought along another beaker of water as well, because I know I will need that later on. So I've got my 2 pennies now to experiment with, cents to experiment with, and what I've got here is quite a concentrated solution of caustic soda. So it's a caustic soda solution, and I've put in the bottom of it some zinc powder, and we're going to make that warm. I don't want it actually to boil, but I do want it to be quite hot, and when we've got it hot, I'm hoping there'll still be some zinc in the bottom of this, and we're going to drop the cents into the bottom of it. So we'll just let this heat up, and then we'll be able to move on. That's now getting quite warm, so I'm going to drop our 2 1-cent pieces into it. 1, 2. I've dropped one on top of the other, which isn't really too helpful, so just separate them a bit. And we need to leave those in there for a while. What we will need to do is, as time goes on, to turn them occasionally. So if I can get hold of them and turn it over, and do the same with the other one. And you might begin to see that there's a little bit of bubbling starting to go on in there. That's good. And so, with occasional turning and keeping the solution warm, they just need to be left for a bit, and then we'll see how we've got on. Now, my solution's getting quite hot, so I'm going to turn off the heat. And see whether we're ready to have a look at our 1-cent pieces. Here is one of them. I'm going to just put it into my cup of water, and I'll let you have a look in a second. But you might be able to see as they come out of here, they've actually gone silvery. But let's have a look. Here's my beaker of water. So I've given them a little rinse by going into that, but you can see that they've come out silvery. So I'm going to take these away and give them a good rinse under the tap. So here we are. I've got the nice copper one we started with, and we've now got 2 silver ones as well. We're going to obviously keep the copper one, we'll keep one of the silver ones now, and we'll take the other silver one, and that's the one that we're going to try and turn into gold. To do this, we're going to use our gas burner, so I will need just to take the solution and the tripod out of the way. And the idea is just to have a flame here. So I've got quite a hot burner flame. I'm going to put the coin that we're trying to turn into gold, I'm going to put that into the flame just for a few seconds to try and make the change. So we're trying to put it into the flame just for a few seconds to see whether we can turn it into gold. I do believe it's going. So we've got now a golden coin here. I'll put it alongside the others so that you can compare the two. And there you can see we have the coppery one that we started with, a silver one, and finally a gold one, the alchemist's dream, to start with a base metal and turn it into something that was much more valuable. That, of course, is a fraud. Well, at least it would be a fraud if it wasn't that I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. We started with our copper 1-cent piece, and we put it in that solution of caustic soda that had zinc in the bottom of it. And what was happening there was zinc was being deposited on the coin. Now zinc is a silvery kind of colour, so by the time the coin had got a coating of zinc on it, it looked silver, and with a little bit of polish it would pass for silver. Now the final thing we did was heat the silver coin, and when we heated it, the zinc that was on the outside started to mix in with the copper that was just underneath it. Well, if you mix copper with zinc, what you get is brass, and brass is a gold colour. So that coin is not really a gold one, it's a brass coated one, because we've got copper and zinc there in what we call an alloy. So it may look as though we've turned copper into gold, but in fact, of course, we haven't, so we're not going to get rich that way. We need now, of course, to look at the other of our alchemist streams. That is the one of trying to produce an elixir that would make you live forever. Well, I'm just going to clear up some of our science stuff, and then we'll have a look at how we can pursue that one. We've cleared our science equipment out of the way, and we've made all that safe. So now we're ready to pursue the idea of the elixir of life. This is a very ancient idea, but it's always been really doomed to failure. Except there's one possible ray of light back in the mists of time from the town of Sychar, which is in the eastern Mediterranean. Now, near Sychar there was an ancient well. This well was so ancient that even in ancient times they thought it was ancient. And the women of the area would go to this well to collect water. In fact, you can see this photograph is of women still doing exactly that in round about 1890. Anyway, the story is that there was a report from long, long ago that one day one woman went on her own to the well. I expect that she was a sort of local outcast in that she went on her own at a quiet time. Well, when she went to the well, she met a mysterious lone stranger. I said that the well was ancient. In fact, although it was already old at the time of our story, it's still there today, and we can track its history, certainly over the last few hundred years, without too much difficulty. I showed you the photograph that came from the end of the 1800s. You can see here it is in about 1912, and you can see a bit of an enclosure around the well. The Romans had built a city not too far away from this in their time, and over the years that city has expanded and developed, and now there is a larger city there, and the well is in fact in the eastern part of that city. The city is called Nablus. But back to the strange encounter at the well. When the woman got to the well, she met the lone, mysterious stranger, and he asked her for a drink. Well, that set up a conversation, and it was in that conversation that the stranger said to her that he could give her a drink that would give her unending life. The whole episode was really unusual, but it made such an impression that it was recorded in ancient documents and it's made its way into our Bible. It's in John's Gospel, and as you've probably guessed, the lone traveller was Jesus. He was alone because his friends had gone into town to get some food. Now, he didn't actually offer the woman a liquid drink. In fact, he'd asked her for a drink. But what he told her was that if people received him and followed his teaching, it would be like having a spring of water inside them, and that spring would give them such a life that it could never end. It was quite outrageous, of course, though I could point to millions and millions of people who've believed it, though how many people believe a thing doesn't make it true. If there's one thing that we've learnt over the last few years, it's that vast numbers of people will believe anything, even if it's blatantly wrong and there's not a shred of evidence for it. Well, as a scientist, I would like to see evidence for things. Now, that can be quite difficult when it comes to something that's in history. But even so, before I start believing something that's totally outrageous, I would like to see some evidence. And I'd want to see evidence that suggests that the whole thing is more likely to be true than not. Now, investigating the truth of the things that Jesus said will have to be in another video, but in the meantime I would suggest that you don't dismiss what Jesus said and what Jesus claimed, but follow up the evidence. You might be surprised about what you find. Now, my attempt to make gold from copper was clearly misguided. It was interesting, but it was disappointing if you wanted to get rich. On the other hand, looking to Jesus as someone who brings us life, I find is far from misguided. And that leads to treasure and riches beyond price.